Hi there, this is Ardhana again, and just in introducing myself, that brings up one of the first things I wanted to talk about. Some people who've watched the first video have asked what my name means, and so I'm happy to share that with you. Ardhana is an abbreviated form of the name Ardhanarishwar. And Ardhanarishwar is a form of Shiva and Shakti in one body. And so one half of the body is Shiva and the other half is Shakti. So we have a form that is half male and half female. And the Shiva side is white, which is supposed to represent semen. And the Shakti side of the body is red and represents menstrual blood. And around the time that I came out as transgendered and was asking questions about what kind of name I was going to choose, I contemplated a few things, and this actually segues beautifully into the topics that I'd like to cover in this next video here. My actual given name is rather gender neutral, and I could have kept that name rather easily and not ever had to worry about legally changing it. But that's not a name that I really feel represents me. I didn't want to just choose a different name for the sake of it being different. Neither did I want to choose a name that was simply a more masculine representation of my new self, my new emerging self. I wanted there to be a name that was truly symbolic of my journey. And so, like many things in my life, it became something that I surrendered to a process of receiving it. And I'm a visual artist, among other things, and I paint, and the process of painting is one of those surrendered expressions as well. I never plan a painting. I simply meditate with the canvas, and I allow the images and the symbolisms to emerge. And they're very powerful, archetypal, mythical, eternal, and universal themes that come through onto the canvas that way. I feel very blessed to have a process that allows me the grace to step back and not try to manipulate the medium, but allows something true to really manifest, something very pure. And so when I wanted to find a name that truly expressed my core being and expressed the journey that I'm on, I wanted it to be that same kind of surrender and letting go. So I did so, and one day I was sitting in a space where I was renting in order to facilitate creative work, partly as an art studio, but also as a kind of space where I could invite others for spiritual counsel, both giving and receiving, a place to hold workshops that allowed people to really learn to open up their senses and begin to be courageous and daring with their creativity. And I was sitting in this space, and there was one of my paintings on the wall, and this painting has a sky that really seems to be in motion, and there's a brilliant white star up in the heavens, and then directly below that is a little island, and there was a figure there. That figure was Ardhana, in the royal ease pose, and then below that figure, sort of standing on the water, was in warrior pose, was Ganesh, holding a red flag and his beads flowing, and the his foot, one foot just barely touching the surface of the water. And I sat and I was contemplating this, and I was looking at the images, and I felt like I had been drawn into the painting. And I was feeling the atmospherics of it, and the spiritual energies of it. And then all of a sudden, it just occurred to me. It was like an aha, and a kind of, oh, of course. And I just knew it felt very much like the kind of energy I've heard people describe when they've received a name from a guru or from a spiritual master. And it was just that kind of dispensation almost from the universe. And it was like, oh, well, of course, that's my name. It's Ardhana. And so that's where the name came from. And its significance to me is this, that I feel very much that I need to be able to honor the purpose of the polarization. And the original intention behind there being a model of nature that requires there to be a masculine and a feminine, that requires there to be a kind of complementary manifestation of intention. And in my mind, that is why we have the masculine and the feminine. And it looks like there has to be a binary, even though many of us who have questioned and explored what gender is for us have often really worked the concepts of that polarity. And I really love the fact that we have people who are gender fluid and gender queer and gender questioning, as well as those who really are very strongly and potently knowing, feel the certainty of their position as one or the other. And that's something I really wanted to talk about today. So the question about the name was perfect. There are there are moments when I distinctly feel the ability to remember being in a newborn body. And some people have never experienced that, and some people feel like, well, that's nonsense. You can't really experience that. Those aren't real. But I believe that they're real. And there are moments when I feel like I'm able to immerse myself in a sort of film where I watch, but from the inside out, as if I'm really in the whole, I'm in the scene as well as witnessing the scene, being in the body from infancy on through my earliest childhood. And what I've experienced through those memories is the my relationship to my body, what that's looked like, what that's felt like over the course of this lifetime. And the shifts and the changes in that. And I want to relate this to questions that people have asked me about dysphoria, body dysphoria. And I have to say that my relationship to my body has shifted and changed over time. And it's not entirely what it was when I was younger, but I have felt myself returning somewhat to that stage where I had very much to the challenge of overcoming traumatic body memories from close to birth, and then spent my early infancy kind of learning to adapt to being in the body. I was born a preemie, and I spent close to 2 months in an incubator. And during that time, I wasn't touched very often because one of the core problems in stabilizing my health was that my blood pressure was unpredictable. And so I wasn't handled very often, and I wasn't touched very often. And that's a whole other psychological discussion. But what I can say about that in regards my relationship to my body and my relationship to my body through the questions of gender is that the ability just to be grounded in the flesh alone was challenging. And it took me the better part of the first year to feel like I was able to ground properly. And I did so with the help of both the neonatal intensive care nurses and also my mother, and most importantly my grandmother, because she was the one person that I truly remember having really intimate, consistent contact with through my body. So my most precious memories are of her singing and rubbing my back and holding me until I would fall asleep. And those are some of the most amazingly comforting sensations, body memories that I have. And so through that process of simply nurturing a body, my body, in its infancy, in its early years, I then was able to do that work, which happens at a subconscious level at that age, of starting to build and realize an identity. And my truly consistent first memories begin when I'm about 3. And from that point on, I most definitely identified as male. And as far as I was concerned, I was just a little boy. And my sense of having a female body really didn't apply until adolescence. I mean, at some point, I think I probably became cognitively aware by comparison, and also talks in the books and everything, that I didn't have the same body parts, kind of. And I say kind of, and this is where it becomes rather interesting, because I think 2 different things happened here for me. And I don't know if this is something that very many other people have experienced, and if they have, I'd really like to be able to hear about those experiences, and I'd really like to be able to dialogue about them. But again, my sense of myself, I think, was a little bit I'd have to say it included the transcendent sort of sight. I always sensed another body. And so, what I've heard from a few different medical doctors and psychologists on this thought, they tend to categorize it as a part of the old thinking, the old paradigm about body and gender identity and dysphoria, as a kind of delusion. But I don't really think it's that at all. Much like many people have phantom limbs when they've been amputated, an arm or a leg, I consistently felt like I had a phantom male body. And so, in the interest of just being very direct and honest, I didn't really register that I didn't have what my male friends had. I definitely perceived and actually experienced and felt that I had a penis, and that was just, and that my body didn't really register. My physical body didn't really register, and I was very much interacting with my world and interacting with other people and interacting with my own concept of self through the astral body. And that relationship was true until adolescence, and then the force of a female puberty kind of rattled all of that, and it caused a great many things to be experienced as trauma, not just psychologically and emotionally, but also physically. I felt like there was discord between those vehicles, and I couldn't reconcile that. I didn't have those tools, I didn't have that language, and because it's not a part of our culture to really understand things from a spiritual perspective. And so the reason why this is important to me, and one of the reasons why the name that came to me to adopt as both a new masculine identity, but also a spiritual identity, a statement about my purpose for being here and the way that I'm intended to express in the world, is very much about if you've seen the first video, you know a little bit about the guidance that I received about not pursuing the course of transitioning much earlier in my life, and why. And then why the decision was made because of guidance received much more recently, and stepping fully into a committed path towards transitioning outwardly, and embracing that masculine identity. And but what I will say here to kind of reiterate that is the path over so many years in which I was accepting the path of embracing the feminine and learning what that is, that form of Shiva and Shakti together, which is Ardhana, matters, is very important to me. It is a precious sort of figure to me, because when we move between those poles, and we're seeking to find our right placement, where is our right resonance in relationship to the masculine or the feminine, I believe that it's all too easy, if we're not doing it from a higher transcendent understanding, as well as a very deeply human passage, we miss something, we skip a step, we forget that we need to integrate something that is more meaningful than just aligning the body with its core purpose. And if we don't move beyond the desire body, if we don't just focus on our emotional and psychological well-being, but we've managed to look beyond that to why is it that we've manifested in certain ways, and why have we come into the body? Those are the questions that I'm asking, and those are the dialogues that I really want to inspire in our community and in the world at large, in society at large needs to ask these questions. There is a purpose, I believe, for why we come into the body in any given shape and in any particular alignment. And it does not just have to do with gender, but it has to do with, our race and our culture and the set of the faith beliefs, constructs that are around us. I do happen to believe, partly because I'm a strong believer in reincarnation, as I stated before, but I fully believe that we at least have a co-creative, conscious will about where it is that we are born. And many, many people would disagree with me about this, and that's fine. I'm not here to force my beliefs on anybody. I just simply want to state that's what I believe, and so my construct of reality is framed in this way for a reason. And so, having said that, I feel that it's important to be able to state that we, when we're born, even if it turns out that our journey along the way requires us to change course, such as transitioning from one expression of gender to another. Even if that is true, we've still come into a body for a specific reason. And my relationship to my body at birth was complex. And it was complex for a reason. And it presented challenges for me that I required in order to grow and evolve. And I'd said in the previous video that I had been required to move as much into the feminine as possible, and why that is. And then, of course, that guidance reversed later when speaking about much more recently on my path. And what I want to begin to speak about here is that that reason, again, returning to the why, which I feel is much more important than even the facts of what's happening to my body. The why being much more important than the actual journey itself and the manifestation of it. To have lived for so many years expressing first the struggle between a physical form that didn't align with my sense of core identity, which many of us experience, whether we're transgender or not, was key to my evolution and my growth. And it was also key to being able to understand and express something that I required in order to take up my spiritual service here and my work in the world. And so I'm grateful for the awareness that there was a reason, there was a conscious intention of some intelligence that shaped and molded the circumstances of my birth and the shape of my body. That it wasn't just an accident, that it wasn't just a glitch in the matrix, that somehow things got a little confused and now they had to be fixed. That doesn't feel true to me at all. And I think that to believe that leads us more and more into a feeling of helplessness, which doesn't serve anybody and keeps us spinning in some kind of confusion or anger or resentment. And I think that builds a great many distortions that then we have to undo, then we have to realign. And we hope that the physical transformation will do the trick, and it often doesn't do it completely. And that's what I wanted to address, that we, in the transgender community especially, I've noticed in my interactions with folks that are in the support groups and in the community building networks, that there is a great deal of anger that surfaces because there is this dissonance between body and self, and the authentic self. And I understand that because I've certainly traveled through that too. But what I've come to realize in my own journey, and if this resonates with people, I'm very grateful. And if it doesn't, then I wonder why, and I'd be curious to know why. Because certainly my perspective isn't the only valid one. I would never claim that. But I do feel like there are some universal building blocks that tend to be true more than they tend to be false. And so I bring those before us now, and I want to talk about the that idea of intention. I tend to believe that one of the reasons why there is such an experience of human life as being transgendered is because we, as a human race, our species is in this incredible evolutionary flood right now, and we are about to push forward into a whole new state of being, with a new consciousness and a new commitment to aligning ourselves in relationship to one another and to the earth. And in that, I feel like those of us who have come in, and the very vehicle that we're in, the body itself, is built, is designed to be a container that questions that purpose and questions the assumptions that we've made about how it is that we are meant to relate to one another. Our very existence questions what it is to be a woman or a man, and what it is to recognize the whole spectrum of harmonics that exist between this pole and this pole, and in those, as I referenced before, the electromagnetics of gender create harmonies and create disharmonies, and our existence, the fact that we presence at all in our bodies, and need to be able to restructure our entire being to express our true core identity, which in my mind translates as the original intention with which we were born, the original intention that drives the purpose of our being. And so we exist as a living hypothesis. And I never really framed it that way before, but I'm hearing that ring in my ears, and it feels completely true. We are a living hypothesis. And I wish that this was something that was embraced more by more of us. Many more of us could be asking the question of how is it that we can presence in a way that exemplifies the core dignity of the whole of humanity by radiating these questions about purpose and identity and interrelationship. And if we start thinking in terms of of harmonics, and if we start thinking in terms of also the models of nature, which I can't state enough, that we have a blueprint in front of us already that would allow us to see that our journey as we transition, moving from the expression of one gender to another, and working with a kind of alchemy, because we're really that's it's science that borders on magic, as Einstein would say, that science is really magic that we don't understand yet, and magic is really science that we haven't mastered yet. And so I very much think of this process of what's happening with my physical vehicles as well as what's happening to my other vehicles as they realign, coming into focus through the lens of the masculine. But I still look at the relationship of the feminine within to the masculine emerging without. And I'm questioning about those harmonics. And what is the living question that I'm presenting through my journey to others and to the world? And what I sense about that is, and what I take very seriously as a part of my responsibility to others and to the world, is that I've walked this threshold for a long time between the masculine and the feminine, and therefore also between all polarities of light and darkness, for instance. And so I must be able to exist as a living mediation between the two. And that's why Ardhana becomes my spiritual name, as well as the name that people will address me by through the lens of the transition. And it's also why that figure is tattooed on my arm. And what is that then to be a living mediator? The personification of mediation between all polarities, but specifically between the masculine and the feminine. For me, that means that I must at all times keep as my primary meditation the right alignment of relationship between those two energies and those two consciousnesses. It means in living relationship that I have to be able to hold a space of intention that is about that alignment, and bringing balance to those relations, both in the abstract and in the archetypal, as well as in the very human. And so this really actually becomes the core of the work that I do, as a kind of healer, as a kind of spiritual counsel. Much of the work that I've done with others has been about the alignment of these relationships and the alignment of those energies within each individual as well as with others, and often this happens with couples. And then bringing that into a much bigger perspective, a much broader and expanded horizon, this also becomes the relationship of humanity with Gaia, because it is understood that humanity is the masculine presence upon the feminine body of Gaia, of the earth. And to mediate that relationship is really at the core of what I would call my ministry. And I feel that in my spiritual journey and the path that I've walked, all of the threads have come together to create this beautiful tapestry. And when I look at the tapestry, what I see is her. I see Gaia, and I see this glorious being who is a woman of immense vulnerability at this time. And humanity and its masculine energetics upon her body and in relationship to her have a lot to atone for and have a lot to amend. But in that, the challenge that lies before us is one in which we not only take responsibility for our past actions and for the indiscretions and the errors of our ways, the assumptions that we've made about what our relationship is to her, but it is also about taking the definitive step forward into health and into balance. And so, well, what does this matter to the transgender community? What does this matter to people who are struggling to simply live the life that they're meant to live, bringing their bodies into harmony with their inner selves? Well, it has everything to do with it. Because given what I've just said about humanity and Gaia, we are that relationship within our own bodies. And no matter which direction that we're moving in, be it from the feminine to the masculine or the masculine to the feminine, if we are, journeying anywhere along that spectrum, be it towards either of the poles or somewhere in between, and we're trying to find our right place, we are negotiating that same I wanted to use the word treaty, but that's not intimate enough. We are negotiating that same courtship. Because in the transition from one expression of gender to the other, we are courting ourselves. Or we are being courted. If we are moving towards the masculine, it is our responsibility of our inner man to court the feminine that is then receding and moving into a place of having to empower the manifestation and realization of the masculine that is emerging. And if we're moving in the other direction, from the masculine to the feminine, we are becoming the one courted. And we have to make a space in order to receive the masculine which is receding, but which is having to create a sanctuary where the feminine then becomes empowered into her full sovereign identity. And so we are the embodiment of this negotiation of humanity and the earth itself. Her beingness has to be raised up to its sovereign state. And the masculine needs to rise up to its sovereign state by embodying the dignity and the nobility and the honor of a true manifestation of the original intended expression of masculinity. And so I bring this forward because this is not anything that I've ever heard anyone speak about in the context of being transgendered. And I want to be a voice that brings this forward so that our consciousness about our responsibility and our responsiveness can expand. Not simply our own journeys becoming more and more fulfilling by bringing consciousness to it, but also our responsibility to the world. We were once considered holy people and healers and shaman, and we were given positions in which our understanding of the dualities and of the poles and of the inclusiveness and the expansiveness of selfhood by journeying between genders was honored and recognized as a powerful force for realization, for healing. And so I want us, more than anything, I want us to reclaim that. And I want us to be able to own that we are poised in a unique perspective. And that even if we're not called to a spiritual life, an overtly spiritual life, even if we're not called to take up a big mission or cut a huge profile in the world, even if we want more than anything to just live a simple, humble human life, that we embrace the consciousness of this truth and make it a living, walking prayer, a meditation, an intention that we hold, that we, by breathing, by living authentically, by holding ourselves as consciously as possible in the world, are a healing agency, and that we are capable of bringing balance to all opposites, of healing all polarized realities, of smoothing conflicts, because we are presencing right between all of them. And so that's an awful lot to absorb and to take in. I'm going to wrap up this video because it's getting very lengthy, and I think there's more than enough here for people to be able to take in and absorb at this time. But this is something I feel very passionately about, and I could talk for a long time about it. And I want to thank you for watching. I do, again, want to encourage people to leave comments if they're respectful. I caution people that if they want to leave hateful messages, that they will be deleted. I will report people for that kind of behavior. Pretty soon I won't have to leave these disclaimers anymore. But I want to encourage dialogue, and I want people to respond. Please also share these videos if you feel so called, wherever, social networks or on your page. If you feel they're valuable, please do so. And I want to leave with a prayer, a meditation, that all beings are able to embrace their core purpose and realize peace through doing so. And I want to thank you, and I wish you a good night, and I offer you many blessings. And until next time, thank you. Namaste.